What's up, Jimbo? I can't hear you. Are you muted? Showing you're muted.
I'm talking on mute like an idiot.
There it goes.
What's up, man? And hello to all of you guys tonight. I'm excited to get into this. We got some exciting stuff to talk about.
Yes. And the news never sleeps, even in the off season.
That's right. So you guys know, neither do we.
Wow. My wife would disagree with you.
No, I'm just kidding. But we're excited to get into it nonetheless. Talk, what you guys came here to hear about, and that is the Baltimore Ravens. We got we are going to, however, take a look around the AFC North in general. Talk about some important dates coming up for the NFL. For you guys to keep an eye on. Provide some predictions from other pundits, national pundits, ESPN pundits, things like that. And as always, field your comments and questions. So make sure to light up that chat section, and we will be sure to do that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Glenn, where do you want to start?
Well, let's see. Well, I kind of want to start. Let's give some background news. We do have to fill everyone in case they haven't heard that the Ravens did bring back a familiar face. They brought back Eric Tomlinson, the tight end that was signed mid-season after the Boyle injury. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. Eric Tomlinson to a 1-year, $1.015 million deal with $125,000 guaranteed. So, not a splashy deal, but it brings back a big-bodied guy who played well for the Ravens and filled in when he was desperately needed after Boyle went down. He provided that punch in the blocking game that we desperately needed after Boyle went down. So, while it's not the pass-catching vertical threat tight end that we were kind of hoping for in maybe a Zach Ertz or somebody in the draft, that doesn't mean it's not possible.
Right.
But I will say I find it to be less likely that we'll address the situation in free agency. I don't know if you agree with me there, but now I look at the roster and we have now 3 or 4 tight ends if you include Eli Wolf. I didn't see Breeland on the list. I'm not sure if Breeland is even still part of the organization or if he has or if they have plans to bring him back. But the list I saw just had 4 tight ends listed, and that being Mark Andrews, Nick Boyle, Eric Tomlinson, and Eli Wolf. So, and also we know that Pat Ricard played some tight end when Boyle went down as well, and could definitely be used in a pinch in that situation. So I'll ask you, Jimmy, does the re-signing of Eric Tomlinson make you think the Ravens will be less aggressive or less likely to add anyone in free agency, or is for a trade?
Yeah, no, I actually do disagree with you on that.
How dare you?
And just really quickly, guys, just let us know if I think we might be having issues again with the chat, because either you guys are really quiet, which I don't think is the case. It's usually not, or nothing is happening there. So if you're on, hit us up in there just so we make sure we know it's working, because we can't see any of your chats or questions as it stands. So it's not that we're ignoring them. We just can't see them. But as to your question, Glenn, I certainly don't think that this has any effect on our strategy when it comes to acquiring a pass catcher at tight end, because Eric DeCosta said it all, wide receivers come in all shapes and sizes. Let's be honest. Like in the case of Zach Ertz, he's a wide receiver. Like, yeah, he plays tight end, but I mean, he's a pass catcher, right? So I can see what you mean as far as like depth, but I don't know what, the only guys I consider to be guarantees to be on the roster are Nick Boyle, Mark Andrews, and I guess because they gave him, $125,000 in guarantee, $125,000 in guaranteed money, they could let go of Tomlinson and not, not skip a beat. Not that they'd want to do that, but those 2 guys, Boyle and Andrews, are really the only 2 that I consider to be like locks. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I guess this doesn't necessarily guarantee him being on the depth chart or the final roster, but when they break camp. But at the same time, I mean, how many tight ends are they really realistically going to keep? So, I mean, I guess you could just say that, look, if they didn't like him, he could get released before camp. That's possible, but I don't know. I found it a little bit. It made me think maybe they're not going to go after any current players, and maybe they'll just choose to address this in the draft, or choose not to address it at all and go in with those guys, and hopefully they feel good about it. But Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, I want to move on to another prediction. I think you're going to like hearing this, Jimmy. Jamison Hensley,
Oh boy.
the reporter for ESPN. He went to Twitter to brag a little bit, and rightfully so, on his correct predictions the last few seasons.
Okay.
In 2019, he correctly predicted that the Ravens would sign Mark Ingram before that season. Last season, he correctly predicted that the Ravens would acquire Calais Campbell. So for this year, his prediction is that the Ravens will sign free agent guard from the Patriots, Joe Thuney.
I like it.
Thuney. Yeah, I mean, I know that was a guy you mentioned early on as a
Mm-hmm.
guy that you think, I mean, look, a lot of people want to shore up that offensive line, and this guy would certainly do that. He'd be an instant plug and play at right guard
Mm-hmm.
for the Ravens. He seems like he would fit with us. He is, let's see, I think I don't have his age in front of me. Oh, yeah,
I
5 years
gotcha.
experience. He was a third-round pick out of North Carolina
Yeah, he's
State.
28.
Okay, there it is. 28. He just turned 28,
Yep.
if I'm looking at that correctly. So very young man, especially for the position he plays. Now, the only issue I see here is when I go on Spot Track, his predicted market value right now is $15 million in average annual salary, which, that seems a little steep for what the Ravens might be able to get to right now. As it stands, I think the prediction is they're going to have 19.7 in cap space, but that's according to Over the Cap, and I'm not sure if that's, if they're hearing any inside information, or is this a prediction they're going on. It looks like right now they're anticipating the cap to be at 185, which would give the Ravens 19 million in space. So do you think it's possible? I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that the Ravens fans and anyone who knows Joe Thuney would be excited to see him in Baltimore. But is it possible, Jimmy, they can fit him under the cap?
It's possible. But one of the things, if I'm not mistaken, that's $5 million more than Scherf out of Washington, right? As far as market value on Spot Track, his market value is only 10 million, right? And he was the All Pro.
Yeah.
That's interesting to me. Let me see here. Let me just pull this up real quick to be sure. Scherf, what's his age? I don't think he's much older, right?
Nah, Scherf's a young man as well.
Yeah.
I think he's 30. I think he's older. 2 years older, but still not it's not insane.
Right.
A 30-year-old guard in the league. I mean, they stick around for quite some time. Now, I guess injuries start to become a concern the older they are.
Yeah, he's 29.
Okay.
Turned 29 in December, so he wouldn't be 30 until pretty much the end of next season.
Okay.
So yeah, is that surprising to you? Like, I would love the move, but I would also be surprised if he gets 15 million annually, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would be surprised, especially in a year like this. This may be a candidate for a short-term contract to then hit free agency again when he's still young enough to cash in on the big one. Because, I mean, I think it's a good comparison, those two, because I look them up in PFF, and let's see, Brandon Scherf was the 4th-rated guard in the whole league, and Joe Thuney was 10th. So you're talking 2 top 10 guards in the league.
Right.
And they're both, they're both good at both. They're not just a run heavy guy and they can't pass block. Now I'll say this: Brandon Scherf definitely graded out as the overall better player. He had an overall grade of 86, where Thuney had just an overall grade of 74. So a big jump, despite only being 6 spots behind him as far as overall rating.
Right.
But yeah, Scherf can get it done, man. He can get it done on the ground and pass block. And Thuney, while he can do both, it definitely looks like he edges more as a pass blocker, which, if we're taking Eric DeCosta's word for it, he definitely wanted to seal up the pass blocking and thought that would be a big aid to the pass game, more so even than a number 1 receiver. If you're believing what he was saying in his last press conference, he definitely mentioned the O-line first and last in bringing up, how to fix the passing attack. So, man, that would be kind of cool. So what do you think a realistic deal is that they'd be willing to give a guy like Thuney?
Yeah, I mean, it can't. So they have him rated at 15 million a year. What's the length they have on Spot Track? I feel like that's his value to me is relatively inflated on an annual perspective.
They got a 5-year, $76 million projection.
Well, I can tell you, I don't think the Ravens are doing that.
Nah, I don't think so.
But I could see the one thing I will disagree with you on is the 1 year thing. This could just be me, but I don't consider offensive linemen too much of risk takers. I don't know why I peg them that way, but like I think if you came to them with like, we'll give you even if it was less than they would get in a normal year, but it was more enough guaranteed money to where they can still like, this is another thing, like fish hunt, buy a log cabin in the middle of nowhere and like just take care of their family, right? Like, I just consider them all simple men. You know what I mean? Like, now that is definitely not the case. We've seen some really flashy offensive linemen.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like Scherf and Joe Tooney, both of them are kind of like, lunch pail guys.
Okay.
Where they might they might want the guaranteed money, even if the overall contract might be less. But that again could bode well for us, right? So if there is a guy that's less, that's more risk averse, then we could get a few more years out of him, right? On what would regularly be a higher annual contract value player, we get a little bit lower based on the time when he's hitting free agency.
Yeah, but and also I think that what its possibility is if he's faced with a situation where he may have to take a lesser deal than he was expecting or his agent was expecting, why not go to a team that seems like the most offensive lineman friendly team in the league? I mean, every O lineman says they want to pass block or run block over pass block. Well, we throw the ball 150, 200 times less than anyone else, at a bare minimum. So you're going to get that opportunity to go smash people and not have to always backpedal and absorb the hits. You're going to be able to deliver a bunch of hits here in Baltimore. So if there's a spot where he may be more willing to sign that shorter deal, that prove it deal,
I guess that's true.
It would seem like a good place to do it here. It would be here in Baltimore. Plus you stay in the AFC. If you have any, some people like playing their former team. So if you want to have a shot at taking on the Patriots and any type of, you're going to have to stay in the AFC most likely unless you nail the division they're playing in the NFC. So I think there's a good chance that, look, he's been right on the last 2 years, old Jameson. He's nailed the last two predictions. So
yeah,
we're going by track record. He's right on this one.
It's either that or Murphy's Law, and he's destined to be wrong on one of them, right?
That's true. I guess he is due.
Now, the benefit, not that I don't know if any of this actually carries any weight for these guys, but like, for example, with Scherf, he probably wouldn't even have to move his house.
That's true.
He could probably live in the same spot. Now, I know a lot of players move up to like the Owings Mills or even like the Bel Air area and stuff like that. And he's probably down in PG County or somewhere around Bethesda or something like that. But it's reasonable, right? Like he could still do it. I don't know if he'd want to battle that traffic on 495 every day. But either way, even if he had to move up 95 a little bit, we're talking about a drive.
Yeah, exactly.
So it depends on what these guys' personality types are like and what they feel like doing. He could always take a helicopter in every day.
I don't know. That's a weird subject ever since the Kobe incident.
I guess that's true. Yeah. But either way, I think that I like where he's going, whether it's him or Scherf. I like Jameson's idea, and he's got to have some sort of it can't just be gut, right? It's got to be about what he's been hearing.
Yeah, I would think so. He's pretty tied in. He's been with ESPN a long time now, so I think he definitely, if there's someone who has inside information, he might be the guy. So be on the lookout, Jimmy. Would you be happy to hear that? Because that would mean that they're done, but that would mean that they're out of the market likely for Zach Ertz.
Yeah.
They're out of the market for any of the big time wide receivers at free agent, even the ones that would be willing to accept a short-term deal. That would still, you'd think that would pretty much spend all their free agent dollars.
Yeah. You know what? I'd be all right with it. Because to me, the offensive line, look, we saw what happened. Now, different scenario, but the Chiefs got dominated on the offensive line. Mm-hmm. If we can get, one of the best offensive lines on paper and then stay healthy and dominate, then I think the other things just come. I think that the tight end position we can work with in the draft. I think that, the same thing with the wide receivers, and then we have these new coaches that can develop them. But if our offensive line is in shambles,
that's a problem.
And none of those other things work, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So now there's another guy who I think is interesting as a free agent, who is not going to be a guy that moves the needle, like for a lot of fans. Mm-hmm. And he's had a lot of health issues, but I could totally see him bringing him in. I already know what your reaction is going to be, because he's not going to be, I can see him being a sneaky difference maker, but David Johnson is going to be released by the Texans. Or if
we're talking about the same David Johnson, right? The running back?
The running back.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The only reason I'm bringing him up is because I know that Justice Hill, I know that we have 3 guys.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. When I saw it, I just thought he could be a guy that we could have in camp and compete, see what he's like, see if he's healthy. I mean, obviously he's had good seasons. And if you're a running back and you want to revive your career, just like you're talking about offensive lineman, why would you go anywhere but Baltimore? And not saying that he's going to, take the number 1 spot, even the number 2 spot, but it would once again be a really intriguing and really good running back room. Think about those 4 in a running back room. You know
I mean, they did keep 4 last year.
I know he's not a needle mover, right? Like I get that, but it could be a low risk, high reward type scenario if health, if he continues to get healthier. I think he's a versatile guy as far as what he can do. So anyway, I saw that name and I was like, you know what, that would be a sneaky, like a potentially good thing, but that would be a total Ravens signing. Like
it would be a Ravens signing, but I guess that would be a backup plan if Gus Edwards is taken from Baltimore. But as long as they can bring back those 3, I think I'd be happy going into the year with those 3 and maybe give that extra roster spot to another position, maybe offensive line or something, or maybe even receiver if you're really want to keep 6. I think I would be surprised because if they're going to bring in another running back, I would prefer it being a young guy. I mean, I'm not the biggest Justice Hill fan, but he has been here the last 2 years, and I think it would be his turn to be the 3rd back. And I'd feel kind of bad for him if they decide to bring in an old guy, especially one that's had the injury issues. I personally, I think David Johnson's probably done as much as he can do in this league. And I think he's done, but that's my opinion. But another guy that I saw was being talked about is Tyrell Williams, the wide receiver who played in Oakland. He missed pretty much all of last year because of an injury, a shoulder injury, I believe. But the season before, he was pretty good, Jimmy. He had 42 catches, 6 touchdowns. As their number 1, he's 6'4", and he provides that big play ability that we've been talking about here in Baltimore to be opposite Marquise. So, what do you think the chances are bringing like a Tyrell Williams in? He would definitely fit in theory, and theoretically he would fit in price range wise. But do you like him as a player? Like I said, he is 6'4", 205.
Yeah, no, I like you said, in theory, barring health, sounds great to me. I think that it could be a good fit. And like you said, a guy that maybe we can find some. I think that Eric DeCosta, forget the Earl Thomas signing, relatively speaking, is probably the best GM at value deals.
Mm-hmm.
So like what I mean by that is that it's not always about the money that you spend as far as the dollar amount, but it's about how much you extract out of each dollar spent, right? So that could be a guy that he is intrigued by because, dude, I bet you if Eric DeCosta was like a real estate agent, he would be an animal. I mean, just an absolute, so
he would find,
just find that perfect home in that perfect neighborhood that has just a couple things wrong that he can fix up and then turn around and, get all this value out of it every single time. I mean, he would run HGTV, right? Like that would be his thing. But so I think that guy would shoot. What's his name again? The Raiders guy you were just talking about.
Tyrell Williams.
Yeah. Okay. So I think he would be the type of guy that Eric would see as like a fixer upper, like, maybe I can find this guy in a good neighborhood, just needs a little bit of a facelift, and bam, he's $1 million listing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah.
So I like it. I absolutely like it. And you know what? I tell you what, it really sucks though. And YouTube, I got a qualm. I hope you hear me. It stinks having people on and not being able to see what you guys are saying, because I'm sure you're saying things by point. I'm giving suggestions.
I tried to pull it up, and it's just saying this action isn't allowed when you try and go into the chat. So I'm not sure exactly why that's happening, but it's very frustrating on our end.
Because we love interacting with you guys.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I'm trying to figure it out while also talking at the same time, and that's not my strong suit, Jimmy. I mean, I can't walk and chew gum, much just. Oh, there we go. Okay, so how were you able to do? So you put a chat in. Okay.
I put a chat in just to see. Okay,
there it goes.
There we go.
We got to do this every time. You have to lead us off with the first chat. Apparently, there we go. What's up, Josh? What's going on, Chris? Hey, Lindsay. All right, finally, we see you
I was
guys.
getting
Awesome.
scared there. Jeez, a whiz.
Like, my goodness, we started early for this. Okay. All right. So we were talking about Tyrell Williams. I think he's a possibility. But Jimmy, I wanted to also get into some of the verbiage on some of
Yeah.
these guys, because there's been a lot of people kind of unsure what restricted free agent
Okay,
means.
good idea.
Because we do have a pretty big one in Gus. I don't know how big. Let's see. I thought I sent it to our email. Did I not?
Yeah, I got it right in front of me.
Okay. All right, cool. If you could just kind of let people know. So
Yep.
Gus this year is a restricted free agent. So
yeah,
what
so
exactly
let me break
does
that down.
mean? Okay.
So a restricted free agent for all you guys out there is a player with 3 accrued seasons and an expired contract. So usually this happens with a perfect example is Gus, because he was an undrafted rookie. So these guys don't sign, they don't have bracketed long-term deals.
Okay.
And then so it says a restricted free agent, they are free to negotiate and sign with any team, but their original team can offer them one or various qualifying offers or tenders. I'm sure you guys have all heard on the ESPN or NFL Network or anything like that, or on this show, that come with the right of first refusal and or draft pick compensation. So if the tender is withdrawn by a team, the restricted free agent becomes an unrestricted free agent. So the Ravens essentially can give him a tender, a draft designation that's basically a value. So it would go like as follows. So they give him a tender. So for example, a first round tender is a 1-year contract worth $4.6 million or greater. Now, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Gus fetches a deal that's $5 million annually. Like, I don't think that's outside the realm of possibilities, right?
Right. Yeah.
So if the player's original team decides not to match an offer sheet signed with another team, it is entitled to a first round pick from the player's new team. So that, even though Gus's value would be more than like 4.6 million based on his play, what's going to keep other teams from doing something like this is the fact that they're not only it's almost a trade at that point, right? Because they're giving up a first rounder for Gus Edwards. No, obviously Gus is my favorite Raven, but I'm not giving up a first rounder for Gus Edwards.
Nobody is.
Right. So and so it says here that unless received 2 days or later prior to the NFL draft, draft compensation for each tender is due in the same league year as the offer sheet is signed.
Okay.
So, and then just to give you a better idea, a second round tender is 3.25. An original round tender is what it's called. It's a 1-year, of course, contract at 2.1, and so forth. So I think, is that what you're looking for? I think that's kind of what we wanted as far as breakdowns go.
Yeah, just to let everyone know, because I wasn't exactly sure of what type of compensation they would receive if another team signed them to an offer sheet the Ravens weren't going to be able to match. So yeah, okay, all right, that makes some sense. So hopefully now we have 2 of those guys. Skura is unrestricted. Is that correct?
So right, but the other guy is Chris Board. Now his is a little different. He's an exclusive rights free agent. So what that means is that is any player with fewer than 3 accrued seasons and an expired contract. Okay. So if his original team offers him a 1-year contract at the league minimum, the player cannot negotiate with other teams. So all we got to do to keep Chris Board is pay him the minimum. And unfortunately, not because the Ravens don't want to pay him more, but because it's a business, that's all he's going to get paid.
Yeah.
Yep. And then next year, he'll be in Gus's scenario, because then he'll have accrued that 3-year period to where he'll still stay a Raven unless they release him. But if they want to keep him, once again, it doesn't make sense for a team to give up a draft pick for unless they really like him and he blows up this year. But that's the distinction there.
Okay. All right. Well, another suggestion I keep seeing pop up. I think it was originally trying to find. I think Dalton Capps was the person who first brought up Mike Williams and a suggested trade with Orlando Brown Jr. And there seems like a lot of people really would like to see that. Now, when I watch Mike Williams, he is exactly what the Ravens need. He is the possession receiver, the 50-50 ball winner that I've been wanting to see in Baltimore. Matter of fact, when he came out, I wanted to see him in Baltimore, although the chances of that were very slim. I would be elated to see Mike Williams or someone like him to come. I mean, this guy, you cannot leave him single coverage unless you want to be have a ball thrown his way and have a good chance it's going to go Mike Williams' way. So I would absolutely love it. The only problem is right now he has a $15.6 million cap hit. He's in the final year of his deal. It looks like they could just cut him and get completely out from under that and have zero dead money. So I think that they're probably looking to move him, and if they can't move him, they're probably going to have to cut him unless they want to take on that. I mean, it's a massive cap hit. I think
that's the last year of his rookie deal, right? Because he was a first rounder and he's coming into his
fifth year, right?
Yeah,
I think this is his fifth year. Yeah.
So they've either got to pick up the option.
Yeah. I mean, that's a monster. Well, I think they already did pick up the option, which is why he's on their team.
Right.
But
yeah.
But man, that's a monster cap number. I think it's
that would be higher than
8% of their cap.
Yeah, that would be $20,000 lower than Keenan Allen.
Yeah, that's insane. I don't think you can pay both those guys that kind of money, and I think they want to end up hanging on to Keenan Allen because they have more invested in him.
Yep.
Long term, and they can't get away from his deal unless they want to eat a bunch of money. So
yeah, I'm just looking here, and yeah. Anyway, keep going. Sorry,
I think Mike Evans is definitely on the move. Not
Mike Evans.
I'm sorry, Mike Williams.
I wish.
Yeah, I'd like Mike Evans too, but Mike Williams is pretty darn good himself. But I think Mike Williams is going to ultimately be off the Chargers. I just don't know how they work the money. So if the Ravens agree to a trade, they're not going to agree to a trade at that $15 million cap hit. There's just no way.
Well, I think the Ravens could get him and extend him, right?
Now that's the big one. If they want to sign him and then sign him to a contract extension, lowering his cap hit and all that this season, that's an option. But do you want to then spend that money on it? Because I'm assuming he's going to want decent money. So if he wants anything close to what these guys are asking for, Allen Robinson, all these guys, they're asking for 20 a year. So I would love him for that 1 year, but I don't know if the Ravens can afford this guy going forward. And if you want to trade a guy like Orlando Brown, you want capital for more than one season's worth. You want draft picks that are now under contract for 5, 4, or just 3 years. I don't know if you want a guy who is really, he's not much of a value. I mean, that's the thing that Eric DeCosta kept bringing up, value. We want value for everything. So how much value are you getting when you have to pay him either the 15-6 this year, or you have to, extend him, which means guarantees him more money and make sure he's here for a long time. Either way, you got to spend.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely going to be an interesting one, but I think it is definitely worth keeping an eye on him. It would be crazy to think, just in my mind. So this year, I guess let me ask you this. They have a great young quarterback. They have Keenan Allen. Mm-hmm. Do they think that they're competing for a Super Bowl this year? Like, how much would it inhibit their growth to keep him on the roster? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, even if it is just this year, like, what if they just want to keep him to compete and see what they can do this year?
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
they could definitely
do that
just for this 5th year option. I'm not saying that I agree with you long term. You can't. I don't know how many teams get away with paying 2 number ones.
Right. Now you don't. It's hard.
But while their rookie quarterback is under that rookie deal,
that's true.
But like you said, I mean, we all know that 2 things are true: the Chargers' offensive line is trash, mm-hmm. and that a young quarterback needs a good offensive line. So if you do have that opportunity, it would be really interesting to see what sort of structure would that deal look like, and the Ravens would have to come to terms with Mike Williams before they trade.
Oh yeah, or at least have some sort of understanding already in place. But also you have to remember they're hopeful, I think, to re-sign or bring back Hunter Henry at tight end, which isn't going to be. That's not going to be cheap. And a young quarterback likes a tight end, an athletic tight end like him. So if they may end up having to make a choice between him and Mike Williams, and even with him hitting free agency and being a pretty highly touted free agent this year in Hunter Henry, I still think he's not going to cost anywhere near $15.6 million. So you could bring him back for a much cheaper deal than just keeping Mike Williams. But yeah, it's going to be interesting what they end up doing with them, because I don't know how close they feel they are to the Super Bowl. When you look at the other teams in their division, that's a horse. I mean, you gotta climb some pretty big hitters in that division. So if they want to look at this as a year where, look, they got to start getting some picks or rebuilding the offensive line, Orlando Brown will be a heck of a start to rebuilding that offensive line and protecting their young quarterback.
Yeah, but the only thing I'm telling you is I have a gut now, I know that John and Bill aren't the biggest fans of each other, but I'm telling you, man, I know that Belichick has his eyes on Brown. I just feel like there's a thing there. I don't know. I'm getting that from no one except for the fact that Bill Belichick loved his dad and the way his dad played football. And I think that carries a lot of weight. And
they got a lot of cap room.
Yeah, and he talked about little Zeus coming out. He had some really positive comments about him. So anyway,
now,
I'm just saying.
I believe he had the tackle that he drafted. There was a rookie for the Patriots this year, ended up being one of the top performing rookies of the whole season, and he was absolutely phenomenal. I'm blanking on his name right now, but they got a pretty good rookie tackle. I don't know if he's a left or right. I thought he was a right, but if he's a left, then they would certainly knock him out of
same problem.
Yeah, exactly. So it would have to be a right, but yeah, it's an interesting thought. I mean, if they want to bring in a young quarterback, there it goes, Michael Onwenu. I'm not that. It just says tackle. It doesn't say left or right. Something tells me he was a right, but chances are he was probably a left if he was his. But yeah, he was a run blocking monster for them. Graded out very highly. So yeah, that's a possibility. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But I also see a lot of people asking for AB.
Yeah, I wanted to say something about that, if that's all right with you, Glenn.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't think everyone talks about getting him for cheap. I think he's done taking bargains.
Well, I think if he takes a bargain, he's taking it in Tampa.
Going to be in Tampa Bay. That's number one. But even when he comes back to Tampa Bay, I don't think it's going to be for anywhere near what he said. Look, I did my time. I paid my dues. I showed I can stay healthy. Yeah, I didn't have the most productive year, but you don't think that AB still thinks he's a number one?
He probably does, but who's willing to pay him as a number one?
I still think he's a number one. I'm not saying teams are going to pay him like a number one, but I think that teams will pay him much more than whatever he got paid last year. I don't think anyone's getting AB for cheap in comparison to what he got paid last year, is I guess what I'm saying. I think it's fair to say that he made like 1.5. I think
it was very low. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's fair to say that he makes at like 8 times more than that next year.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, it's possible,
I just don't
but
see it being cheap.
They're going to lose Chris Godwin. And
right.
I don't think they're, and Mike Evans has already come out. I know he was riding the high of the Super Bowl, but he did say he'd be willing to take a pay cut to keep some of these vets around. And I think AB is going to stay with Tom Brady and going to continue to compete as long as Tom Brady's still
why
throwing.
Wouldn't you, right?
Yeah, and the only way you peel him out of there is if you offer him crazy money, which honestly is good. And he was good this year. He didn't have any off the field issues after he was signed by the Bucks, but
he had one, but it didn't turn out being a big deal.
Did he?
In his gated community, he like threw something at the camera and was like cursing out the community guard and broke the camera. It was a misdemeanor. And anyway, he ended up paying for the camera or something like that. That was 2 weeks after he got signed.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Well, then I think that would probably scare off teams from giving him a monster investment. I think he's going to end up staying in Tampa and probably still being paid, around 8-10 million, maybe something like that.
Yeah.
And still be a very happy camper and compete for championships. So, yeah, but he's an option. There was somebody who asked a question. Okay. Emek Lane. Yes, we did talk about a DJ Chark trade. We thought it made a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
They have picks. They have a need at offensive line, and they have a receiver, DJ Chark, who's in the last year of his deal, who would make a whole lot of sense to come here to Baltimore if the Ravens like him.
Yeah. Now I want to mention another thing too, is that, since we're talking about free agent wide receivers, Bleacher Report has linked us to Corey Davis. Now they aren't Jamison Hensley. They don't have the track record of getting it right.
Yeah.
Right. So, or the connections, but I don't want him.
You don't like Corey?
I don't know. Part of it is because he played for the Titans, and I'm trying to remove that part of my brain when I make this decision. But the other part is that I didn't see too much from him before AJ Brown was around. AJ Brown was around.
Quarterback issues, but yeah,
that's true. But I mean, what was his pick? Wasn't he a top 10?
Oh yeah, he was like 7,
right? Yeah,
something like that. Yeah.
So even with quarterback issues.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know how much of a faith I have in him in being everything that he was supposed to be. And I guess anybody's rebut to that would be, well, he's going to be with Mark Andrews, going to be with Marquise Brown. But I don't know. I think
He
he's
doesn't
young.
excite you.
No, and he's going to be wanting to get all the money he can. I mean, so what's he going to come for? I mean, what do you think you know what I mean? I don't think the deal's going to be cheap.
No, but he's probably not in that first tier. He's probably somewhere in the second tier. To me, I like Corey Davis. I think if we can afford him, then he would be a perfect ad for us. I look at what he did last year, and yeah, you mentioned he didn't necessarily light it up as soon as and by the way, he was the fifth overall selection in 2017. He's only 26 years old. He is 6'3", almost 210. So he's got the size. He had a monster jump, by far his best season last year. He picked a good time to turn in his best season. He was the 10th rated receiver in the league last year, according to PFF, 10th overall. So the dude was balling. I mean, he definitely he showed out. So I think that in the system that he would be put in the Ravens would be very similar to the system he's coming from in Tennessee, where it's still a run heavy based system. Yeah. It's still play action off of that. And he's big, he's physical, he can block downfield already. That's something we don't have to kind of go into questioning. Well, can he get it done? He can do that as well. I think he would be a really nice ad. The biggest question is how much he's going to cost. And, you know, that's going to be a big determiner, because if he is, I think the most he would get paid would have to be down near that $10 million mark. If they can get him to agree to a contract somewhere around $10 million a year, then it's a serious possibility. But if
they have him in at the market value at 9.8. And
now you're talking.
Yeah, so they have 9.8, 4-year deal, 39.4 million. I mean, I guess at that price, he just doesn't. I don't know. There's something about him. Everyone keeps saying no Titans, please. And that might have something like I'm really trying to be logical and objective here and remove that from my equation. That might have something to do with it. But I don't know. When you see him, this might be what it is, Glenn. When you see him next to AJ Brown.
Well, AJ Brown next to anyone.
I'm like, dang, man, don't give me this guy. I want AJ. Don't give me that guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I wish we would have gotten AJ when he came out then.
Yeah.
Isn't it crazy that him and DK were on the same team in the same receiver room? I mean, Jesus.
It's ridiculous, man.
Imagine them two on the same team now.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. It'd be terrifying.
Seriously.
But no, I like Corey Davis. It doesn't sound like you're. So I guess it goes without saying that if you were faced with the choice between Thuney and Davis, you would go, okay. So you're definitely you're more on the let's build from the inside out and shore up this O-line.
Yeah, because if we want our run game to continue to do well, O-line first priority. But not only that, if we want Lamar to develop as a passer, what does he need, Glenn?
Well, he certainly needs confidence in that O-line.
Right. That to me, if you know what I mean, everyone talks about obviously Tom Brady's the GOAT, but he's always chirping at his O-linemen when they're not doing their job. Because he knows that he goes as they go.
Yeah, he's not outrunning anyone. That's for sure.
So certainly I think that same idea goes for any quarterback, even Lamar Jackson, because when you're dropping back looking to throw, even though he can on the drop of a dime run, the idea is not to run every single time, right? It's to see the play through, make the pass, and like you said, be able to step up with confidence in his O-line. So to me, O-line is everything. Everything. Yeah,
it's hard to argue that. Antoine, we would like Zach Ertz. Let's see, Dalton. Yeah, we'd like Zach Ertz. That's our, when we talked about going in this offseason, we said playmaker. It doesn't necessarily mean wide receiver. And I think that maybe in this offense, and it might be unique to Baltimore, tight end may be more valuable than an outside receiver. So yeah, we would be all for that. The question is, how much is he going to cost? When's he going to get released, which is the expectation. But yeah, what's he going to cost? And can they fit now the Eric Tomlinson thing? Jimmy doesn't think. I think it may it kind of complicates that a little bit, because why bring him in if your plans are to bring Zach Ertz? I'm not really sure, because I don't think there's many.
Could be insurance for the knee, for Nick Boyle's knee.
That's true. But how many people do you think are running to Eric Tomlinson to try and get him signed right now? Like,
no, that's a good point. It could be like a measure of good faith.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It was an interesting
because
signing.
You're right. I don't know how hot his market is. Like,
I doubt that. Yeah, I doubt the Ravens were necessarily bidding against many other tight ends. So, or many other teams for the tight ends. So, yeah. And with 4 already on the roster, it seems a little bit stretched, but I guess it wouldn't shock me if they still were able to find a way to make it work.
Yeah, no, certainly. Now one of the things I wanted to do is before, I know we want to get into AFC North breakdown. I'm excited to do that and kind of talk about where we think each team is positioned and so on.
Yeah.
But before we do that, let's do this again. Let's give an update about what we think and what we know about OBJ. That is Orlando Brown Jr., not Odell Beckham Jr.
Yeah.
The big
OBJ.
OBJ, not lowercase, all caps, right? Because he's a big boy. So we know, of course, that he has officially requested a trade, and the Ravens have given him and his agent a green light to go find a trade.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the things that you said yesterday off air, Glenn, I think bears repeating. How soon do you think that this, first of all, do you think that this deal is imminent? It gets done?
Yes. I think it gets done in the next week at the most.
Wow. See, when you said that to me, I was like, man, but it hit me. You're right. Teams want to get their ducks in a row and get their draft strategy, know what they have and don't have as soon as possible. So then all I have to focus on is scouting and how the draft board falls, right?
Yep. Just look at the Stafford deal. Look how long that took. I mean, was the Super Bowl even over? I mean, holy smokes.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And it wasn't, right? The Super Bowl
I don't think it was.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they didn't waste any time. Teams don't like to waste time. They want to know who they got and what they're working with.
Yeah. So that you think this deal's imminent. So do I. And you think it'll happen within a week. I guess, I mean, when you hit me with it, I was like, whew, kind of floored, but I have to agree with you. Now, my follow-up question to that would be, what has your floor for him value-wise changed at all? I think we said a first and a third, right?
That's the very bottom. Yeah.
Right now. So I agree with you there. What do you envision it? Okay. If that's the very bottom, what do you think? If it's just picks, we'll just stay with that.
Okay.
If it's just picks, and you had to, put a couple shekels down, what would you say it would end up being?
I think it's going to end up being a 1 and a 2. I think that there's going to be multiple teams bidding for Orlando Brown, and I think that's the reason the cost drives up a little bit. I don't think there's a very good likelihood it'll be 2 1s because there's only been 9 players in history ever get 2 1s. And although Laramie Tunsil was one of them, I think that was pretty shocking.
That's a one-off.
Yeah, when that happened. So, and honestly, if you gave truth serum to the Bears, as good as Khalil Mack was that first year, I don't know if they would still give up 2 1s for him. They might. He's definitely been a good player, but that's a steep price to pay to give up because then you're also going to have to pay the guy. It's not like you get him for this deal forever. He's playing on 1 more year of a reasonable salary, and then he wants the $20 million or something close to it to play left tackle. So you're giving up a lot of capital, and then you're going to give up a lot of your cap space the next year. So that has to be certainly thought about when you're making this move. But I think ultimately it ends up being a 1-2. I would not be surprised if it's Jacksonville has a nice 1-2. I think it's 25 and 55 or
45.
Okay, 25 and 45. And then Miami also has another nice little 1-2 package of their multiple because those are 2 teams that have multiple first round picks. They could, and I think the Dolphins have 2 1s and 2 2s. So, excuse me, they could look to move it and still have plenty of capital to build around. But anytime a bona fide left tackle comes up for a trade, people want them because they don't come up for trade that often. People want to keep their offensive linemen. Just look around the league and look at the successful teams, and you'll probably be pointing to an offensive line that stayed healthy and was pretty successful. I mean, just look at Tampa. They were the healthier offensive line going into the game. They dominated the game. I mean, I know there was more parts to it than just those guys, but I think it was pretty clear who had the better offensive line. That definitely impacted the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, so that's interesting. A 1 and a 2. What do you think about this? Will they both have to be in this year because the window? I mean, I think Lamar's going to get the deal done anyway. But the biggest thing, even when you guys already know this, I'm sure you're football aficionados. Even when Lamar's deal gets done, he's still going to have this year and his 5th year, right? And then that contract will hit 2. So we got 2 more seasons before that contract just balloons. Whatever that value is. You know what I mean? It's going to go up at the end of those deals.
You talking about for Orlando?
No, Lamar.
Oh, yeah.
So what I'm saying is that, do you think that the reason I brought that up is because for Orlando, do you think that the picks, so what if a team said, I'll give you 2 1s, but one's this year and one's next year, or another team says, I'll give you a 1 and a 2 both this year? Do you see what I'm saying? Do you think that the picks will be this year based on the window that we have to try and, win a championship before Lamar's contract just shoots through the roof? Not saying it's impossible. When it does, much more difficult.
Yeah, no, I think that, that's a good question. I think that's why GMs are paid to do their job, and they don't typically ask players for their input, because all players would be thinking in the short term, and a guy like Eric has to think long term. And I think he would ultimately side with the 2 number 1 picks over the 1 and 2 in just this season, just because that provides more value. He always talks about value. Yep. And, a first round is just more valuable than a second round. Even if you do have to wait one more season, which I think definitely impacts it. I mean, I think if two teams both came to you and said one has a 1 for next year and this one has a 1 for this year, they're going to take the 1 for this year. There's no doubt about it, even with all the challenges going into this draft that they likely wouldn't face next year in next year's draft.
Yeah, I agree with you now that I think about it, because even if a team said, I'll give you a 2021 1 and a 2022 1, right? That overall, I think that provides him with more flexibility. So obviously he could take the first rounder from this year, the extra first round pick, go get somebody, but he could take that other one and trade it, if he wanted to get another high-end receiver, tight end, another lineman, whatever, however that provides him with, you talked about value, more flexibility to mess around with it. So definitely an interesting point there. So the deal's imminent. Wondering if you guys agree or not. And it's going to be really interesting to see where he ends up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people are hoping we can trade him for a player as well as a pick. And that's definitely possible. We brought up DJ Chark, but there's some other guys out there. They could be used to, it depends on what they want. Do they want pass rush? Do they want O-line help? Do they want receiver help? Do they want to go after a tight end? Yeah. There's so many different ways they can go in this, but I'll say this: I would not be disappointed if they were able to get a pass rusher as well, because I don't think there's any way they bring back Yannick or Matthew Judon at that price, unless one of them is willing to settle for a lot less than their market value is predicting. And I am not comfortable going into next season with, sack daddy Jalen Ferguson as our number 1 pass rusher from the outside. That absolutely terrifies me. And even if they are able to bring Bowser back, which I like the player, he's not a pass rusher. He's just not a very good pass rusher. He may get there occasionally because we send more than they block, and he is athletic and has some speed to him. But he's mainly good at, he was pretty good at setting the edge, and he has that speed to where he can run that line of scrimmage and force the back out of bounds before he can turn the edge. And he was really good in coverage. He had to pick in 3 straight games, and that's what we knew when he came out. They thought they could turn him into a pass rusher. They always said that they wish the college team he was with would have blitzed him more often, but maybe there's a reason. And I think we saw that over the course of his rookie deal, that the reason he was probably dropped is because he's good at that, and he's not so good at naturally pass rushing. So if you're telling me we're going in next season, when we saw in the Super Bowl, pass rush, utmost importance, especially the ability to get there with 4 and not having to send 6 like the Ravens seemingly always have to do to get any type of pressure or noise on the quarterback. I don't want to go into it with just these guys. So, while I hope they draft one in the league or in the draft, that's also not a guarantee. And it's not like the Ravens are picking in the top 10. So, I also would not be disappointed to see them try and get an edge guy that they think is a more of a bona fide pass rusher who's maybe in the last year of his deal, and the team isn't expected to extend him.
Yeah, that's a great point that I hadn't thought about as well, but I like that. And just really quickly, one of the comments said, Mike Williams over Chark ? I think they're 2 different buckets as far as their scenarios, right? Like Mike Williams, I think on the open market, we get a lot more money. So I think his extension is going to be a lot higher. So the commitment would have to be a lot more. But just
as a player, who would you take?
I mean, Mike Williams, right? Wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, there's moments where he just jumps off the screen.
It's crazy. I mean, there's times where Herbert last year just threw it up to him, double coverage, and he just went up and got it. And
I mean, the way that I don't think I've ever seen a guy go up and high point it and land flat on his back.
Yeah, smash his head and all that.
Yeah, I mean, he goes for it.
Yeah, and he's been doing that since college, and it's gotten him injured a few times. That's selling out for the ball,
Yeah.
but we don't have a guy right now that does that. And man, it'd be nice to have a guy like that, just because we've seen it all year. When teams say we've had enough of you running the ball, pack the box with one-on-one on the outside, go ahead and do that with Mike Evans or Mike Williams. Golly, I keep calling him Mike Evans with Mike Williams. Because if you throw it up to him, he's likely to get it.
Right. No, certainly. Now, Glenn, I do want to take some time to look around the AFC North and kind of talk about what our thoughts are as far as these teams go, what we see happening. And I mean, some early projections, like who's best positioned going into free agency, and then revisit it again. We say who's best positioned now going into the draft. So that's kind of how I want to have this conversation. But I want to start with the basement, right? We'll start with the basement, work our way up.
Who's in the basement? Because I might argue with you who's in the basement, but we'll start.
I guess that's
in the current standings. I think it's the Bengals, but I don't know
if what? That's a really good point, because it could be the Steelers.
Look, I want to start there. I mean,
yes, let's get into it.
Dude, let me just look. The Ravens right now have a projected cap space of $19.6 million. Right now, as it stands, the Pittsburgh Steelers have a projected cap space of negative $30.6 million. So now look, a lot of that is Big Ben. He's got a $41.2 million cap hit for this season. Now it's expected that if they want to bring him back, that they're going to work out some sort of deal where his cap hit definitely goes down. But even if they're able to do that, it's not like they can erase it. Right. It's still going to be a substantial number. And it's not going to be enough to get them under that that cap. I mean, it's just ridiculous. 30 million over the cap, Jimbo. I mean, I can look around. I got their players in front of me.
Yep.
TJ Watt's a guy they could cut and clear up 10 million but they're not going to do that, right? No, they're not going to cut their best player.
No, but on top of that, he's going to be looking for extension. And I kind of want to add to this. Just think about it. His calculated market value is $25.5 million. Bud Dupree, obviously, they already know they're going to let him go. Right. It's 18.2. Alejandro Villanueva, 16.6, which I think is crazy.
They need to get rid of that guy.
Yeah. So these are all market value guys. So guys that are going to, if I'm not mistaken.
So they're already free agents. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's gone. There's no doubt that Villanueva is gone.
Yeah. And Juju, 16.1.
Gone.
Mike Hilton, 7.8. Avery Williamson, 7.2. Cameron Sutton, 7.2. James Conner, 5.4. So if you if they're already, what did you say, 30 over?
Yeah, 30.
How can they re-sign anyone? Even if they took Ben's deal, they slashed it as much as they could. Then
what? You know who else you didn't mention who's up for a deal next year? Minka, who they just traded all that capital for, who if they don't re-sign would look like a real bonehead of a trade because you gave up all those picks.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I didn't even calculate extensions when it comes to retention, right? Like those are all guys that are already competing. You're already competing against other teams to retain. But yeah, even guys that are on extensions, holy crap. And they have no contingency. I mean, unless you're a believer in Haskins.
Oh, come on. How could you be? I mean, even if you're the most hopeful and optimistic Steeler fan, you got to think at most he's a project. And judging by his behavior, it doesn't seem like a guy who's necessarily a workout warrior, a guy who's really committed to his craft. Seems like he's more committed to the extra stuff that comes along with being an NFL superstar than it does, it's just the old saying, everybody wants to win, but does everybody want to take the time and the energy into putting in what it takes to win?
He's pudgier than New York Mello, dude. Like, come on, man.
Plus, wasn't he at the strip club?
He was at the strip club, no mask on. First of all, you're at but
hey, look, I don't have anybody.
No, I mean, like during a pandemic, even if you got a mask on,
probably not the best place to be.
You're getting all kinds of fluids in your faces, right?
Right. Whatever you want to do in the off season is your business. But when you're a starting quarterback, it's a privilege, not a right. Stay out of the titty bar. Stay in the meeting room, in the weight room. No, but I mean, look, we could be on him all day, but I think the bigger point is I don't know how they get under the cap room for this season, much less next year, if they hope to keep TJ Watt, Minkah Fitzpatrick, if they want to keep Big Ben this year. I just don't know how they do it. even retain their guys, much as bring in any. There's no chance. Like people were saying, JJ wants to play with his brothers in Pittsburgh. Well, that's fine, but they can't even re-sign the best of the brothers right now, and
No.
TJ.
But they
So
couldn't sign me.
yeah, they couldn't. Yeah, they couldn't drag me out there to put on some cleats
They
and
could.
take a
They
couple
don't even
hits.
have enough money, 2 pennies to pinch together and say, "Hey, you want to put on the Steelers uniform?" No, bro, I need more than 2 pennies.
Exactly. So I'll be interested. We might have to get our guy Chris Carter on from Locked On Steelers and ask
that's
him
a good one.
And ask him because there's no more confident Steeler fan or we've never had a guy more bullish on our show about the Steelers. So I would love to see how he spins this to make it make sense to me, because I don't know how they do it. I tell you what, if I was a Steeler fan, I would be hoping and praying that this cap number does exceed the expectations, like some are saying it may. Because if it's anywhere right now, they're saying 185 and they're 30 over. So if it's 180, that's another $5 million they got to come up with. I think they're in big trouble.
And
Jimmy.
you know what, Glenn? You just opened up my idea here. You opened up my mind to an idea here, and I'm saying this live so that way I'm committing us to it in the next month. Okay, in the next month, we're gonna have an AFC North roundup. We're gonna have our guy from the Bengals. We're gonna have Chris Carter, and we're gonna have Jeff Risdon, and we're gonna talk it out here. See what's going on. See what these are our resident experts, of course, if you guys don't know, on the Bengals, the Browns, the Steelers, and then of course yours truly. We are the resident experts on all things Ravens. So we will do that, and we'll do it live to see the reactions. I'm really excited to get you guys to participate as well. I think that's gonna be fun. But you're right, man. What happened? What do you do if you're the Steelers? I don't see a way out. Like, where's the light at the end of the tunnel? What is our path forward?
Yeah, I would be. Tomlin's got his hands full. He went all these seasons, all these years without a losing season. Well, this is going to be his toughest challenge yet, even tougher than losing Big Ben and having to put the Rudolph down there or back there. I don't know how they do it, but
so
I
say
guess
they keep Big Ben, right?
Yeah,
I guess we'll touch on this, but I don't want to spend too much time on it. Say they keep Big Ben, but they're going to lose Juju. They're going to lose Alejandro. They're going to lose Dupree. They're going to lose Connor, who, has had his ups and downs. Even if they keep Ben and they lose everyone else, do you see them competing for a 500 season? Or at that point, are you like,
Well, they would have to nail the draft. They would have to get 7 starters out of the draft, including a left tackle, because they're going to lose that. And really at running back, who do they have at running back? I mean, they just don't have a lot of guys that put any fear in you. And they have to keep Big Ben, by the way, and they have to extend him, because if they were to cut him, Jimmy, he would have a $22.2 million dead cap hit. I mean, so they can't cut him. And while they keep him, he's got a $41 million cap. So they are absolutely in cap nightmare right now. And by the way, who was it in the chat? James Leverett. No, I'm not related to new Ravens coach T. Martin. No, I am not. Although we do share a last name, we are not in any way related.
Your brothers from different mothers is what.
That's right. That's right. But we are part of the Raven family now, as well as everyone else in here who is a part of Ravens Nation.
That's right.
But yeah, the Steelers are in huge trouble.
Oh my gosh! And you know what? I'm gonna relish every moment of it. Every look, Flo's nose said it. Let the steel curtain implode. That is right. Let it implode right in their faces. I cannot wait for it. They're probably over there saying the same thing about us and Lamar Jackson.
Well,
quarterback.
They're not saying we're in $30 million cap deficit.
Yeah.
That's one thing we know they're not saying.
Both teams in Pennsylvania are in cap hell. I mean, let's be honest. The Eagles and the Steelers, but staying with the AFC North, obviously. Yeah, not looking good for them. All right, so let's move on.
Okay, let's go to the Bengals. I want to go to the Bengals. We'll save the highest competition for last. The Bengals right now have a projected cap space of just under $38 million, so much better for their cap number. But they're serious lack when it comes to talent, because, I mean, look, you can look at their record, or you could look at how many guys they have paying big money to that just weren't key contributors, whether it be from injury or what. Trey Waynes missed most of last year. He's got a $15 million cap hit. Geno Atkins, while we know he's talented, he's on the end of his career, and he's certainly, been injured a lot lately and on the downslide. DJ Reader, the big free agent they brought in from Houston, talented guy, really, really good player, but he had some issues last year as well. And I'm looking on the outside. They still got a decent group of receivers. T. Higgins was a fantastic find. I don't think he really shocks anyone by his play. Most expecting him to be good, and he was just that. He was good. I think they still have a guy, Alden Tate, who was kind of buried in their depth chart last season, but he could still play pretty good. I expect him to lose AJ Green, but at this point, I'm not sure how much of a loss that really is. He seemed completely disinterested. Tyler Boyd, I think one of them still the more underrated receivers in this league, a guy who's killed the Ravens in pass. And obviously they feel like they found their quarterback in Joe Burrow. So I think there's a lot more optimism for the Bengals than the Steelers, which sounds crazy to say out loud, but they do have some guys. The biggest thing is they have to rebuild in the trenches. We talked about this with the Ravens. Well, the same goes for these guys. I mean, yeah, they got some good names, but these names aren't staying healthy. They just traded away their DN that was there for 20 years, it seemed like, in Dunlap, and he had a career resurgence in Seattle. So, they have to rebuild on the offense and defensive line. There's no doubt about it. And they got to start adding to that secondary. Trey Waynes is an okay player, but to me, he's not a $15.8 million cap hit player. They're not even close. I mean, he's not even on the level of the corners we have here in Baltimore. But yet he's being paid like he is. And I get you need a veteran. I'm sure they brought him in for more than his play on the field. But at some point when you're getting paid $15 million, you got to contribute on the field. So what are your thoughts after hearing all that about the Bengals?
Yeah. So I think the Bengals got a couple things going for them. Like you said, in that they found their quarterback. And I believe that, Joey Burrow to me is I take him already over Baker Mayfield. Might be crazy, but, I'm just more of a believer in him. And that's hard for me to say for anyone in the AFC North because I judge those teams the most harshly, right? Like I'm the least objective about those teams because I want them to be bad. I just want us to cruise the AFC North, but I think the kid's got something. I think he's a leader. I think he's gone through adversity in his career. And I think it makes him have rare mental toughness at the age that he is, even though he is older than Lamar Jackson, mind you. But what I'll say is that, yes, I think they need to do two things in order to avoid perpetual mediocrity. They need to stop overpaying they need to stop overpaying mediocre players, just like you were talking about, or they need to start drafting better. Yeah, they hit on Burrow, and I like
it's hard to not hit when you have the number one pick.
Right. And I like oh my gosh, how am I missing his name? The kid out of Clemson. He's their wide receiver. I like this kid. T. Higgins. Exactly. I wanted to say the kid out of USC who went to Indy. What was his name?
Junior, Michael Pittman Jr.
Yeah. So I always get those two confused, but yeah. So I like the T. Higgins as well, but they've got to start hitting on the draft until they become a more like sexy team. But I honestly think that the problem with the Bengals, and you might even say the Steelers, is not just the roster themselves, but it is the front office. Like answers have to come from the front office. Things have to work. And that's why I think that those two teams, while the Bengals are trending, I think that those two teams are in a different bucket than the Browns and the Ravens, because as crazy as it sounds, I think the Browns finally got it right at coach, obviously, and at GM.
Yeah. Well, at coach, I think it's still kind of up in the air. I think they
just won coach of the year.
Who's that? Oh, I thought you were talking about Zach Taylor still. I'm sorry.
No. Sorry.
The Browns. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So yeah, the Browns, as crazy as it sounds, I think they finally got it right at coach and GM.
Yeah. Yep.
But you're right. Zach Taylor totally still up in the air. We haven't seen vets like playing for him yet, period.
Right.
And that's a big part of the equation.
And eventually you got to start getting wins.
Yeah.
You can be close as many times as you want, but until you start getting wins,
right.
You're not very valuable. But, I think that the biggest thing is that the commitment from ownership is so lacking in Cincinnati that as a top free agent, why are you going to go to a team that still does not have an indoor practice facility, as Chris Madry just pointed out as I was saying it? They still don't have an indoor practice facility in Cincinnati. Almost all the top major five, Power 5 conference teams have indoor facilities, and yet an NFL team in 2021 still practices in the damn rain. So, I mean, if you're a free agent, why are you ever going to choose Cincinnati unless they're grossly overpaying, which is, I'm sure, why Trey Waynes ended up in Cincinnati. Nobody else was giving them anywhere that type of money. So until they start getting the commitment from ownership, that's one thing we're very lucky here in Baltimore, is that Steve Bisciotti does not look at this as a money-making scheme.
Right.
He puts all the money he makes from it right back into the team. I mean, just go to the Castle any year, you'll see construction because they're building more. They're adding more. They change from artificial fields right to grass as soon as they determined that it was healthier and better for their players. I mean, this guy has in any number of ways, he puts money into this team, whereas Cincinnati, they just don't do it. So, man, it's frustrating. It must be frustrating as a Cincinnati Bengals fan to know that you're always going to be behind that 8 ball. This isn't like baseball where you just kind of come resigned to the fact that, look, the Yankees are going to spend more, Dodgers are going to spend more, Boston's going to spend more. This is supposed to be where all the teams spend equally or as close to equally as possible to create parity. Well, you can't force your owner, I guess, to improve the facility. So, until they start taking it more seriously, then I think they'll always be behind the 8 ball, and they'll always struggle to compete against the other big teams.
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm a free agent, just like you said, I walk in there and pull a Don Haskins, this ain't pulling the truck up the hill, right? Like, no way, man. I'm turning around. I'm out of there. So I agree with you 100%. But let's get into the 2 other teams.
Okay.
Obviously, our Ravens will end with that, but we'll start with the Browns. And like I said, I feel like they got the GM right. I feel like they got the coach right. Mm-hmm. But one thing I want to talk about, not necessarily just their cap situation, because I think they're going to have some questions coming up. Mm-hmm. What's your take? We haven't heard a lot. I haven't heard anything about a Baker extension.
Not yet, no.
So this is going to be his 4th year.
Yep.
And the Lamar extension seems to be imminent. Mm-hmm. I guess let's see. Baker was the first pick, and then Darnold. So it seems to me that only Josh and Lamar have imminent extensions in place. So are they going to?
Well, maybe they're hearing the same stuff we're hearing about Lamar in Cleveland.
But I haven't seen anything on Twitter or anything from Risdon, anything at all.
Right.
So what do you think? So I guess my question to you is, what do you think their feelings are on Baker?
Yeah, man, it's got to be a tough one because he definitely had his best season as a pro this year under Stefanski. He had 26 touchdowns to just 8 picks. Just under 63% completion percentage. So I think they're happy with what they saw from him. I think that they're intrigued by here's the biggest thing for me. What do they do with Odell Beckham? Because when they had Odell Beckham in 2019, he had 22 touchdowns and 21 interceptions. Not acceptable. Absolutely not acceptable. And the start of 2020 wasn't necessarily a good start until they lost Odell Beckham, and then everything changed. So to me, they have to make that hard choice, and they're going to have to get rid of Odell Beckham and see what they can get for him. Now, they gave him a big contract, so this isn't a situation where, it's not like anything like our OBJ where teams are going to be lining up to give top-end draft picks.
And he's got the knee injury.
He's got the knee. He hasn't necessarily shown that explosion that – look, when he was with New York, it's always like there's certain guys that just look different. He looked different. He looked more explosive. He could catch a slant route and just – beat the angles, split the defense, and be gone. Yeah. He hasn't shown that he has that same level of explosion, and he's not making the spectacular catches he used to make.
Right, and the other thing, too, that's even more concerning, if you dig deeper and, look at – I was reading a report the other day that, all teams are doing the same thing, that his chef – he has a personal chef who has to trick him into eating vegetables and fish. Like, he doesn't like eating nutritiously. He's like a 5-year-old that way.
Yeah.
That's not good for your longevity. He's not 22 anymore. He's not a college kid anymore. These things have a compounding effect on your body. So like you said, the longevity is super important. And when teams hear reports like that, you think, yeah, maybe he's not worth a second. Maybe he's not worth a first or whatever high round pick a team would. Mm-hmm. But I did see a report today that linked him. This is kind of crazy to me. Everyone's getting linked to the Bucks now.
Yeah, I saw the same report. Yeah. Yeah, that'll be interesting. I don't know how they would. I guess I'd have to look at their cap space. I'm not sure how they'd be able to fit that type of deal. But if someone made the article, obviously they made a point as to how they could get him under.
But do you think he gets moved? Do you think that just has to get done?
Has to get done. It absolutely has to get done. They shown whatever reason they don't have the chemistry, and at that point, like going into the season, you have to think it's like a ticking time bomb. As soon as they start to struggle, fingers are going to be pointing every direction. They're going to say, is it because of Odell? It would just become too big of a distraction. So I think that they have to get rid of him. But then it goes to, well, going into this year, is this just like a prove it year deal for Baker Mayfield? Or are you just hoping that he puts together another one, and and if he puts up a stinker, are you going to start looking elsewhere rather than extend him? Maybe look at a free agent who might be coming up for availability. I know a lot of people are saying out of Minnesota that Kirk Cousins in a couple years, when they can get out from underneath that deal, he could be up for an extension elsewhere. And Stefanski came from Minnesota, so I think there's other guys out there. But yeah, I mean, I think the jury's still out on Baker Mayfield and whether he's going to be a big time contributor. But he looked pretty good when he had that monster of a run game and that beast offensive line that they assembled in front of him. So I guess if in the right circumstances, he can perform to the level you were hoping for, but can he do it without perfect circumstances around him? I think that's a big question.
Yeah, because has anyone, I think this is fair to say of the Browns, has anyone done more for their young quarterback as far as surrounding him with weapons? His offensive line was horrid last year. What did they do? They drafted a left tackle. They made a Conklin, if I'm not mistaken, at the time before the Lane Johnson deal, the highest paid right tackle. So, I mean, they've checked all the boxes, but how long can that last, right? Like, how long can those things continue to persist when Baker's deal will be coming up? And I think, Orlovsky talks about this on ESPN, that quarterbacks are just different guys. And when they're in that huddle, they feel, if they don't feel like they're the alpha, then it's a problem. And so I think that the fact that OBJ, while I don't think he's like outwardly like super vocal or in anyone's face or anything like that, the fact that he's a bigger star than Baker, I think weighs heavy on him. Mm-hmm. And psychologically feels like he needs to force feed him. Where Jarvis to me is more of a team guy. He's the absolute non-diva team guy, in my opinion. Where like, even though I think Jarvis is every bit as, he might not be the rare talent OBJ is as a football player. I think he's every bit as good, but personality and stardom wise, he just doesn't have that same superstardom that OBJ has. So I think that messes with Baker psychologically big time. But other than Baker, how do you see that their position going into free agency?
Well, they do have, let's see.
I think they have 29, right? 29 in cap space is, I think, it says estimated cap space with the top 51, which is the minimum you have to have under contract, 29.6 million. The estimated cap space at 22.
And are you on Spot Track?
I'm on Spot Track, yeah.
See, I'm on Over the Cap, and they have them estimated at 21 right now. So
that's probably the all, like with tenders and things like that. Yeah, 20, 21, 22 is where they're at as well in Spot Track.
Okay, all right. So yeah, I mean, they got a little bit of room. They don't have a ton. It's very similar to the Ravens and how much space that they have. So I think that they have an opportunity to add someone to replace Odell Beckham when they decide to move on from him. I think they eventually will. The question is, will anybody be willing to give up much for him? With that cap number, it really makes you question what type of draft picks they're going to get for him. But I think next year they're setting up to have – look, they drafted Grant Delpit in the first or second round, LSU. I thought he was the best cover safety in the draft last year. I think he was fantastic at LSU. He's going to be an immediate impact player in the secondary. They got some nice tight ends. Harrison Bryant, really underrated tight end around the league. And that's, he's running next to a guy like Austin Hooper, who they gave a big bunch of money to, and he's definitely talented. I assume that David Njoku will be gone because he wanted to be gone last year, and they somehow convinced him to stay. So I'm assuming he'll be gone. But when you look at that secondary of Greedy Williams, Grant Delpit, there it is, Denzel Ward. And I mean, that's a pretty good three right there. And then you talk about their pass rusher. They got an all-world guy in Myles Garrett. I know that the other DN got hurt towards the end of the year.
Olivier Vernon.
He got hurt. So I'm not sure if his availability or even his contract standing, because I don't really see him on my list. And it could just be me. I'm missing him, but yeah, I don't see him on the list. So I'm not sure if he's even still with the team, but they still got Sheldon Richardson on the inside, who's a big boy and can make some plays. So I think they have a pretty good team. Now, I think that they are the second best team in this division. And I think they're coming for the Ravens, but we have to remember the last two times the Ravens played them, they handled them pretty, the second game was a tough one. First game was a beatdown. Second one was one of the all-time better games I've seen in regular season history for the Ravens. Of course, the the heroics from Lamar coming back from the cramps.
I hate when people call it the poop game.
That's just I guess trying to be funny there. But no, I mean I thought that was one of the better games. But I think they got a good team. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt are the best tandem in the in the backfield.
Now Nick Chubb's coming up though.
He is coming up.
He does he get a deal before Baker because he doesn't have the 5th-year option, so he could probably end up, this is his contract year coming up. His market value is set at
2022.
Yeah, his market value is set at 12 million. Yeah, I mean, they got to make some decisions here. Baker's market value is $35 million.
Yeah, quarterbacks get paid, don't they?
Yeah, but $35 million for like half a dozen Mayfield? Like, come on, man.
Not feeling it. Okay, well.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is if you're willing to let your quarterback walk, who are you going to replace him with? Because you need one.
You're right. No, you're absolutely right. But my gosh, I don't know if I could stomach writing a $35 million check to Baker Mayfield.
No, he's a turnover machine, man. It's tough.
Well, and I got to shout out Ismadius Thanatos for the McChickens. Apparently, he's feeling the McChickens.
It's been a while since I've had a McChicken.
Oh,
You're going back a decade for a McChicken from me.
Dude, have you ever heard of a McBanger, Glenn?
McBanger?
A McBanger.
No.
This was back in the day when McDonald's was my jam, okay?
McBanger.
So
what
you
is
get
a McBanger?
You get a McDouble. You get a McChicken, okay?
Oh, no.
You take the McChicken. You sandwich it between the McDouble. And that's your McBanger right there.
No, that is horrible sounding.
No, you put some barbecue sauce in there
goodness.
too.
Oh, that's horrifying.
All the saturated fat you need for a week.
More is not always better, okay? Bigger isn't always better, okay? Yeah, that's no. But anyway, as in somebody pointed out, Donovan Peoples-Jones as well. Yeah, another guy who I think, so maybe they don't even have to replace him because they may already have that guy. And tell you what, man, I wanted the Ravens to get him. I remember when he was taken, it was so late in the draft. Remember we were talking about him going.
Yep.
He got taken late, man. I don't really remember off the top of my head. Let me see if I can find him. That way I can. But he was a very late ad. I remember he was like the number 1 high school recruit when he came out and went to Michigan. Never really lived up to the hype at Michigan, but of course, Michigan's had nothing but troubles at the quarterback position.
He was the 187th overall selection.
Yeah, out of what, 215? Isn't it?
Yeah.
Like
250, right?
Yeah, something like that.
6th round.
Yeah, I mean, my goodness, I was hoping and praying the Ravens would take him.
Okay.
And who else would know? Maybe I guess that's why they didn't take him because our coach's brother's the head coach, so maybe he got some bad information or something. But he looked pretty good in the Browns uniform this year when he was running up and down the field.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point as well. But yeah, I think that they're well positioned. Just reading about the McBanger, baby.
McBanger.
You know what? We're gonna have to make a bet this year, and if you lose, you're gonna have to eat a McBanger.
I mean, hey. It's I can eat one in a decade. I'll try it, but it doesn't sound very appealing. A McChicken in the middle of a look. I have had dreams about another McDouble because it's been so long since I had a McDonald's double cheeseburger with some fries. But I know I'd be paying the ultimate price later on that night. So yeah, I don't know. But let's so what do you want to get into the Ravens situation?
Well, yeah, we can do that real quick. We'll wrap up with that if that works for you.
Yeah, that sounds good. All right. So as I mentioned before, Ravens right now projected to have a $19.7 million cap space number. Of course, that's just a prediction. It's not guaranteed. And I'm looking around at some of their bigger cap hits. Ronnie Stanley is the big boy right now. Calais Campbell right on his heels. And then Brandon Williams and Marcus Peters. So still, if you just kind of do the math there, most of their money outside of, Ronnie Stanley is going towards that defensive side of the ball. A lot of people are wishing and hoping that some of the cap space starts trending a little bit towards the offensive side, maybe providing some extra weapons or some help to the O-line. So I'm looking around. I don't see a lot of ways that the Ravens could get more cap space through releasing anyone or anything like that. So it looks like if they want to create any more space, it would have to be through contract extensions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on like Like I look at Brandon Williams, almost $15 million cap hit. He's a good player. I like Brandon
Aging
Williams.
player.
He's an aging guy. A guy gives you zero in the pass rush department. He's 32 years old. He is a free agent next year in 2022. What are your thoughts on now? Look, they could extend him. This is a prime guy that they could use. They could give him a couple years extension and lower his cap number, but then he's around for a little longer. And as I said, he doesn't bring anything to the pass rush game, but we don't want to minimize the value of a
Right.
big time run stuffer as well. So what are your thoughts on a guy like Brandon Williams and the value he brings to the Ravens?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what, like you said, I don't know what you can do better than what we're doing now is the thing with Brandon. While his value isn't at an all-time high as far as his contract compared to output, his output is definitely adequate. And I don't think it's to the point where we can just go find a guy that is a better fit at a better value contract, because they would be that much worse than Brandon. Do you see what I'm saying? So we're kind of in that scenario there. Well, I could see a 1-year extension with some more guaranteed money to kind of lower the hit though. Right.
Okay,
like not a long-term extension, but we'll give him 1 more year, some more guaranteed money, lower the hit a little bit. And because I also don't see him as the type of guy that wants to play for a ton of teams.
No, you think he's a homer, a Ravens homer?
I do think so. And I also don't see him as the type of guy that's going to have a crazy long career or want to play for a super long period of time. Not that he's not passionate about the game or anything like that, but yeah, I don't know. I don't peg him for that guy. Mostly because of his position, and those guys, their heart based on their size, does a lot of work. So I don't know how long you can do that for the rest of your life without, losing some poundage. But certainly,
let me ask you this. I mean, there is some guys out there. If they were, I don't think they'll cut him, because cutting him would cost the Ravens, I think $6 million in dead space. While it would free up, I think $7 million. Yeah, it would free up $7.5 million, but cost them $7 million in dead space. So I don't think that they're going to cut him. So I think the most likely scenario is that they extend him, and that's probably the most likely place that they would be able to get additional cap space to bring in some of these more expensive free agents. So I think it's a possibility, but yeah, I was just looking at the free agents available. There's some interesting names at D tackle, Jimmy, one of which is coming off a Super Bowl, and Ndamukong Suh, who made last year, he signed a 1-year, $8 million deal with Tampa Bay. Man, I mean, if there was a way to get out of Brandon Williams, I think he would be the type of guy that you would say, all right, we're good there. Like, if you're telling me you're getting Suh, okay, I feel good about it, because I think Suh brings you more, as an overall player. He's a good run stuffer, but he also, as proved in the Super Bowl, you can put him out at end. Him and Vita Vea were out at end, collapsing the pocket from the outside.
The thing about him, though, is he's got to want to be there. You know what I mean? It's got to be a scenario that he wants to be there, because I think that sometimes he mentally is not always there. And so, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, that would be awesome, but there could be a world where, there was Derek Wolfe once upon a time. What if you kept Brandon Williams and you throw in Ndamukong Suh?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you just play him where Wolfe played, and you kind of peg him into that rotation.
I like Wolfe for us this year, but I think you're right. He could provide some help.
So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely some names out there, but let me ask you this in general for the Ravens. Do you think that we are the best positioned team going into free agency, or do you think that objectively it's probably the Browns?
Well, it's a tough one, because, they're more, they kind of have certain areas buttoned up that the Ravens don't, but then the Ravens have it in other areas that the Browns defensively still, even with the addition of having Grant Delpit back and Greedy Williams getting healthy.
Garbage.
I mean, look, I like Denzel Ward, but he is what he is. He's a cover guy. He's not a threat to help much against the run. He's a slight guy. He's a guy that, matter of fact, if he is tackling, I think the coaches and some fans are holding their breath and hoping he gets up afterwards. So he is kind of a niche guy, but look, he's really good in coverage. He's just a really good cover corner. So I think he's good. And I think Delpit's going to be good. Question marks really surrounding everyone else. I mean, I think Greedy Williams has moments, but he also has moments where he plays really poorly. Their linebacking core is a mess. Mac Wilson is about all they have there, and he's nothing to be really that impressed by. Their defensive front, if they lose Olivier Vernon, and then you just have, you can focus all your attention on Myles Garrett. As good as he is, if he has nobody opposite him, and you can slow him. So I think defensively, the Ravens are much further ahead and further along. But offensively, I think right now you have to give the nod to the Browns as far as offensive line. You have to give the nod to the Browns as far as weaponry. When you look at the outside weapons they have with Peoples-Jones and Landry and then the tight end group they have. And then obviously I mentioned they have the best running back room in the league. I think offensively, although I definitely lean quarterback for the Ravens with Lamar Jackson, there's a no-brainer there. But I think offensively, in totality, you may have to give the slight lean to them as far as talent. So, and their cap room is very similar. So I think right now I lean slightly to the Ravens because the Browns haven't shown they can beat the Ravens yet. They played them competitively the second game, but they haven't beaten them. Whereas, like, it's a no-brainer now if the Browns are overtaking the Steelers. I don't care what they do. I mean, look, they may have lost to them once, but this team looks like they're on the rise, and the Steelers are on their way down. And I think the Bengals are on the rise too, but they're behind them. So I think right now it goes Ravens, Browns, Bengals, Steelers. And I know it may not end that way in the standings, but for what we're talking about as far as their position going into this offseason and going into the 2021 season, I think all three are better than the Steelers, but I would still give the edge slightly to the Ravens.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think it has everything to do with what you said. Like, we know there's no one in our front office that's questioning whether or not we have a quarterback. Like, I'm sure that there's some guys there that are questioning that extension. Not that Baker's not a starting caliber guy, but like, when you invest in a quarterback, you invest in a quarterback. There's no middle of the road with a quarterback. It doesn't seem to be that there is. So certainly, and then obviously their deficiencies in the secondary are major. So I agree with you, but more than anything, it has to do with the quarterback position at the end of the day. And I will say that I think it's fair to say I believe we have the best coaching staff in the AFC North, which is another huge X factor for us. I'm probably being biased, but I mean,
you're definitely being biased, but that's
Stefanski's great. Stefanski's great, but I think John is much more experienced, and I think he is the best recruiter in building out a staff in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, it's a staff that you can look to as a jumping off point to hopefully get jobs elsewhere. If you look around the league, there's a lot of Ravens being poached off this coaching staff, and I think John Harbaugh is a big reason why. But before we go, I wanted to touch on, was it Tim Ott is really still not happy with this offensive coaching staff. He's not sold on the additions of the coaches like T. Martin and Keith Williams. He still thinks that Greg Roman is too big. He's in the way too much, and he can't get out of his own way. At least this is what I'm getting from all his messages. I'm optimistic on these guys. It's like I mentioned, and I'll mention it again. I mentioned it last time. Bruce Feldman, who covers college football, and he's a big time authority as far as the media in college football. He said, if you were to ask me who are two of maybe the top four guys who are the most respected in the college ranks in terms of developing receivers, these two would be the highest on the list. I mean, if you're not excited about that, I don't know what else you could. I mean,
well, let me just say this real quick. Tim, some of your statements lose some power when you said the Ravens should just cut all the wide receivers and go straight tight ends. So,
oh man, well, I think he's probably being a little bit tongue in cheek.
Well,
there, right?
he might not be.
Maybe not.
I mean, but yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. If you're not excited about that, what else can they do other than get rid of Roman and get?
Yeah, I mean, I know people are like, well, look at their resume. It's like, you can't look at resumes as far as playing resumes.
It'd be revolutionary. Sorry, I'm laughing at Tim.
It would be.
I think he was serious, but no,
you can't look at their playing resume and think that means anything about their coaching resume. I love how people point. There was somebody on our comments pointing to a lack of resume for these guys, and it's like, well, you ever heard of Tom House, who's like the most revered quarterback coach who works with Tom Brady, works with Drew Brees? He was a baseball player and a pitching coach before he decided to start helping quarterbacks and became the number one quarterback coach in the world. So It's not all about what you did in your playing career. It's about how you communicate and how you teach, the mechanics of being a quarterback. It doesn't matter how you did it.
Right.
So the fact that they got two of maybe the two highest respected developers of the wide receiver position out of college, got them young when they can develop and become, who knows, the next OCs, the next Sean McVay of the league. I mean, they all have to start somewhere. So
Yep.
I'm excited. I'm encouraged. I mean, there's no doubt. Look, this offseason or this past offseason, they saw a glaring weakness, and that was the Ravens' run defense, right, Jimmy? They saw the Ravens getting ran all over. Well, did they shore that up or did they not shore that up? I mean, they made sure when they went into that playoff game and saw King Henry again, it was going to be a different story, and it certainly was. So if the Ravens front office is telling me that they're going to commit to fixing this passing game, I have no reason but to believe them, because they fixed, when they pinpoint an issue, Jimbo, they fix that issue. They don't mess around.
Nope.
So to me, bringing in these two guys is a reflection of that. And they're going to go to Greg Roman and they're going to say, Greg, these two guys are going to be heavily inputting in the offensive scheme. They're going to help develop the passing scheme, and they're going to help develop these young receivers, guys that are already here and guys that will be coming here. So I don't know how else you could look at this move and not be encouraged. I don't know what other, I don't know what other move could have gotten you excited outside of,
right,
getting Randy Moss out of retirement and hoping he knows how to teach as good as he can catch, because I don't know what else you can do. I mean, these are two of the, I don't know. They're two of the most highly respected. So I'm excited. I think that they can help this offense. And I'm just hopeful that they're here long enough that we can see the fruits of that later, because I think these guys are going to be quick candidates. Yeah, they're going to be quick candidates. A guy like T. Martin, who's already done it at USC and was doing it at a high level in college. I think he's going to be one of those guys that's going to be, especially if the Ravens passing attack can get back to close to the efficiency in 19, then he's going to be a quick candidate for an OC job.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more on those points. It's definitely going to be an interesting offseason. We're getting closer and closer to some important dates, and we'll end with this, just providing you guys with some dates here to keep your eyes on. Of course, February 23rd through March 9th. The window opens for teams to designate one franchise or transitional player. So I don't know. I can't think off the top of my head any surefire guys that we say. Usually every year there's like a handful of guys that we could potentially see getting the franchise. I don't know if I see one of those guys right now. I don't know. I don't think Ngakoue did enough to to get that type of deal.
16.
Right. So I can't think of anyone, but once again, I mean, it could happen. So March 15th through 17th is the 3 days prior to free agency. Clubs are permitted to contact and enter into contract negotiations with unrestricted free agents. So that's the legal tampering that everyone talks about. And then that's when we'll start hearing the deal. So March 15th is the day. And then the 17th, of course, at 4 p.m. Eastern, free agency officially begins. All contracts expire and clubs can sign new teams. All reported trades and signings cannot be announced by the team until the new league year begins, but we obviously know how that works. And then April 19th, offseason programs begin, and April 23rd, the last day of restricted free agents to sign their offer sheets. Obviously, that will have to do with Gus Edwards and Chris Board, which kind of different, but there's some nuance there, but both dates, that date applies to both of them. And then the 29th, April 29th to May 1st, the NFL draft, baby.
Oh, it's as close to the Super Bowl in my mind as you can get. I love the draft. I'm a draft junkie. I can't wait till we get more into, studying the draft, predicting who the Ravens are going to go after. We had a blast doing it last year. If any of you guys are curious as to some of our reactions and stuff, you can always look it up in the back of our channel. I want to give a couple shout outs to some people who are consistently in the comment section. Nana Rave, always lighting it up. We appreciate it. Jaden Johnson going back and forth with Tim lightheartedly. They're going back and forth. Blake Fleischer, we appreciate it. It's all the kind words you're putting out there. Gary Patterson, shout out to you. But yeah, thanks for joining us, everybody. We're gonna keep doing this. As you guys know, every Tuesday we will be live no matter what. Now we're gonna throw in live sessions like we did tonight, but you're guaranteed every Tuesday. And of course, any news that breaks, you'll be here. You can come to this channel, hear the breakdown, exactly what happened. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. And we'll talk soon.